Hello. I'm going to talk about PKU and mental health today. I've done a couple videos today. You can probably see because in the feed I'll be wearing the same thing in every video, but I want to crank out as many as I can in a day just because if I'm in the mood, I want to get them out there because I know there are going to be days that I don't want to. So anyway, a really common theme that I see in support groups is mental health and anxiety, especially anxiety. Often depression, other issues. But again, this is a heavy topic, talking about mental health, and I know that it's a lot harder to talk about for some people than others. And I'm fortunate enough that I have found a way to talk about mental health, and I'm very comfortable with it. And if you're not, that's okay. You don't have to talk about it. Some things are personal. I know I'm an open book about things like this, and it's definitely not totally normal to be an open book about mental health struggles and personal things. If you want to keep that to yourself, that's absolutely your right. That's great. Keep it to yourself, but know that there is support there for you and that you should have someone you trust and a confidant that you can talk to, and that it's okay to feel these things. So where to begin? I guess I can talk a little bit about my own experience with anxiety and depression. I've touched on it in other videos, but just in case you haven't watched them. I was off diet from about the age of 11 to the age of 19, and I returned to diet. In that time, I had severe downward spirals in many aspects of my life, and the way I ate, and I did a video on eating disorders as well, and PKU. If you want to look it up, it's PKU and eating disorders. But depression and anxiety were definitely other effects that I felt as early. I mean, I had anxiety when I was a little kid. Like, I remember having severe anxiety when I was under 5 years old. And I didn't obviously recognize it back then. I had no idea. Like, I didn't even really realize I had anxiety until I was in my 20s or maybe late teens. And I didn't really address it. But anyway, things like separation anxiety when I was little. I would get really nervous when my mom was gone. I would get nervous around people at school. I didn't have a ton of friends when I was in elementary school or maybe even middle school. As I got into middle school or at least high school, I had like my group of close friends that I'm still friends with today that, you make friends, and I'd rather have a few close friends than a dozen distant friends, dozens of distant friends. Anyway, I got anxious a lot about school, about personal relationships with people. I would get really nervous that I would hurt people or offend people. And it definitely was influenced by my diet, by my being off diet. But then, like I said, I had anxiety even when my diet was good. Like when I was a little kid, I was on diet, but I had anxiety for sure. I definitely had an anxiety disorder as a little girl. So what I just want to say is, like, it's common and it's hard to address it because it's kind of a bit of a cycle that you're stuck in. You're anxious, but maybe you're so trapped in your own thoughts that you don't recognize that it's an issue. And that was definitely the case for me. I mean, I recognized that I had anxiety, but I had so much anxiety. I was worrying about so many other things that, like, that was on the back burner. Like, oh, I have anxiety, but what about all this stuff I'm worrying about? These are more important. That's kind of a conundrum that you get stuck in with anxiety. So because of the way that PKU affects the brain, when phenylalanine builds up in the brain, it kind of toxifies and it affects the way our brains function. One way I always explained it is like, it's like, have you ever seen a diagram of, I think they're called atoms or molecules in a solid, and how they're all stuck together and they're vibrating in a solid? And then in water, they're slipping and sliding past each other. And then in gas, they're like bouncing off of each other and just flying all over the place. I feel like you should be somewhere between solid and water in your brain. And when I was off diet especially, or if my levels are just higher, if I'm just having a bad day now, it's the gaseous state where it's like bang, nothing is connecting and staying strong and solid. No thoughts are allowing themselves to come to an end. Another analogy would be it's like you've got a problem or something you're trying to think through in your head, and there's an A, there's a B, there's a C, there's a D. And D is the where you want to get to. It's end game. That's the solution, we'll call it. You get to A, that's where you ask the question, you're trying to figure out what's wrong. Maybe you get to B, you've identified what's wrong, and then suddenly everything starts spiraling and you can't get to that final solution. That's how I explained the way that I thought. And then I'd have tons of thoughts like that are all trying to get resolved, and none of them are getting resolved. So that was kind of how I felt with anxiety as my levels were high and as I was off diet. And to address my anxiety, I went back on diet because my anxiety was so crippling that I would have panic attacks and I had trouble at work. It affected every aspect of my life, really. So I addressed my diet, and that's a whole other story. But after I addressed my diet, my anxiety got so much better. I wasn't having panic attacks anymore, and I was a lot more positive and a lot more, logical. My thoughts were definitely a little more organized. And that was 3 years ago that I went back on diet. Now, almost 3 years, 2016. It was 2017 that I went back on diet, wasn't it? Yeah, spring of 2017, so March. But anyway, my anxiety got better. So I thought, okay, I'm fine now. I don't have anxiety anymore. It's just like sometimes I get a little anxious. Over time, I came to realize that the amount of anxiety I had was not normal. In fact, I had high anxiety, very high. Like, I don't know about you, but do you know the feeling where someone comes up behind you and scares you and you jump and your chest tightens up and you get like this just like carnal fear in you and terror, just for even a snap second? That's how I felt when just dealing with my own thoughts with anxiety. Like I'd have all these things that I was worrying about, and if I realized a problem in these thoughts, like, oh, what if this happens? All of a sudden my chest would tighten up and it was like painful almost. So just recently, actually, it's December, or excuse me, it's January right now, January 2020, and it wasn't until this September that I actually, maybe it was August, but that I actually went to a doctor's office and sat down and said, I have anxiety, I need something, I need help. Definitely try to address your diet if you have anxiety, but if that's too much and that's too overwhelming, talk to a doctor. Like, that I definitely should have started with anxiety medication rather than starting with going on diet, but going on diet helped in a lot of other aspects, not just anxiety. Anyway, I went to a doctor's office and I sat down and said I have anxiety, and you fill out this form, and usually they're pretty nice about it. I mean, especially if you talk to a physician's assistant or a nurse, or, just someone who's got a little more time maybe, or a trusted physician. You fill out a form and you answer these questions, and they ask you a few more, and it's easy enough because the hardest questions are the ones that are on paper, like feelings of hopelessness, or if you have suicidal thoughts, things like that. Those are the ones that you just check a little box. You don't have to talk about them. But anyway, I was prescribed an anti-anxiety medication, and they said, you might not notice it right away that it's helping, because there's there's a spectrum of anxiety. Not everyone has the same level of anxiety, and the dose you take might not make a significant difference. But anyway, I started on a low dosage, and it definitely helped. That feeling stopped happening, that tightening of my chest. It only happened on rare occasions, and I did up my dosage, and I will say it was so wonderful. It was such a huge help to me, because when I get anxious, I work myself up so much to eventually a point where I'm just ready to burst into tears. And then, I start bawling, and my boyfriend goes, "What's wrong?" Because I haven't had any apparent environmental reasons to start crying. He doesn't know why I'm all of a sudden bawling my eyes out. So that's the kind of anxiety I dealt with when it was really severe. Like I said, I would get panic attacks, my hands would shake, I would just be, kind of crippled with it. But anyway, I would definitely recommend that if you do have severe anxiety, you talk to a doctor. I'm not saying you have to go into a therapist's office and unpack a lot of heavy emotions. Not that that's a bad thing to do, but if that's not something you're ready to do, go to a doctor, fill out a form, talk to them, and see what they recommend. They're not going to give everybody the same recommendations, but I will say that if you feel like, hey, maybe I have a problem with anxiety, you very well could. You should talk to someone about it. Like I said, I didn't recognize that I still had anxiety, and it was extreme. Like even just a few months ago when I wasn't taking any anti-anxiety medications, but my diet was addressed, I definitely had severe anxiety. It definitely affected aspects of my life. I just didn't realize it. So anyway, if you're struggling with anxiety, I feel for you. It's hard. It makes everything harder. It makes going out with friends harder. It makes deciding what to wear. That's something I struggle with, is just deciding what to wear. And I know it sounds silly, but I have like body image issues. Sorry, I just got a call. But anyway, that's something that gives me anxiety. Deciding what to eat gives me anxiety. Should I eat this? Should I eat that? This is lower in protein. This is higher in protein. This is whatever the case is. I get that comparison of which one should I eat and how much should I eat. And that's another thing that gives me anxiety. So just take care of yourself. It's hard. It's not easy. It didn't take me a day to go from recognizing the anxiety to addressing it. So it took years, literally years, to address it. So know that it's normal. It's actually extremely common to have anxiety, whether you have PKU or not. It's extremely common. And then I'll touch on depression real quick before we end this, another really heavy topic. So I was definitely clinically depressed when I was 15, 16. I had disordered eating, extreme body dysmorphia, and I was stressed and anxious, and I was depressed. I felt hopeless. I felt like everything was awful. There was a downside to every situation. And this is a thing that I feel like people who don't have depression don't understand. It's not something, and anxiety as well. Mental health issues are not something you can logic your way out of. They're emotional, and there's literally something wrong. Like there's something misfiring in your brain. It's not something you can just say, oh, I shouldn't feel this way, and bam, it goes away. No. There is something that needs to be addressed right in here. Anyway, when I was depressed, I was sad. Like I said, I would cry and bawl my eyes out. I've touched on this in another video. I would lock myself in the bathroom or wherever it was, a bedroom, and just bawl and bawl for maybe 20 minutes, maybe an hour. And it's just a feeling of extreme hopelessness. You don't feel like there's a logical way that you can feel better. And again, this is going to sound cliche. I always say cliche things, but it can get better. And in fact, depression is cyclic. Technically in psychology, you can learn this. Like depression is cyclic. You will have periods where you get better, and then you might have periods where you go back down again, but take care of yourself and address the issues, and you will get better. Honestly, you won't stay depressed forever. Whether you're depressed for a few months, a few weeks, or a few years, you will get better. I promise. And you can get better. Just all things in health, the way you eat, the way you care for yourself, the way you rest, that does affect your mental health. So if you need a break, take a break. People always talk about personal days and self-care, and you don't have to go to a spa, you don't have to go get a massage, but if you want to go, that's great. You don't have to take a bath. You don't have to do all these luxurious things. Maybe you just rest and you watch your favorite movie and you eat a good meal, you eat your favorite foods. Whatever self-care looks like, do that. Take care of yourself and talk to someone, please. Like whether it's a close friend, your mom, your dad, your sister, your brother, your cousin, your best friend, whoever you feel comfortable opening up to. Maybe it's your dietitian. I've got a dietitian who I've talked to about mental health before, and God, it's amazing. She's given me some of the best advice I've gotten. But whoever you feel comfortable, and like I addressed before, it's not always easy to talk about. In fact, when you're in the throes of depression, it's really hard to talk about. You might not even want to admit that you're depressed to people, because when I was depressed, I didn't want anybody to worry about me. I was like, no, I can handle it. I can handle my stuff. Just don't worry about me. I'm fine. Because I didn't want anybody to worry about me. I was worried about other people. I wasn't worried about myself. I was never thinking about myself, and that was unfortunately a problem for me. I was always worried about other people. I was never like, oh, there's something wrong with me. You can't pour from a glass that's empty. I couldn't take care of other people because I was not taking care of myself. And I know that, again, is cliche. It's something we say and we think, oh, that just sounds pretty, but it's true. It's totally true. If you are struggling and you are drowning in your own problems and your own struggles, you can't really be there for someone else. You can care, you can be sympathetic, you can have compassion, you can love them, but it's also not your job to be there for other people. It's your job to take care of yourself first. And I know it sounds selfish. It doesn't mean you can't take care of other people. It just means you have to take care of yourself first, and that's okay. You deserve love. You deserve respect. You deserve that self-love. You deserve to feel better and to feel like you are worth feeling better, because another feeling is feelings of worthlessness. Anyway, this topic is getting a little, heavy and a little sad, and I want to focus on the brighter side of this mental health discussion, and that's that, again, you can get better. You are 100% able to get better. You talk to someone, talk to me, talk to a doctor, talk to a trusted friend or family member. Journaling is great. I journal a lot, especially when I was sad and depressed. I journaled a ton. I think I filled up a whole book in like 6 months one time, but it helps because you need to figure out what's going on inside, and it's good to think through things. But anyway, I could ramble about this for another hour, and no one wants me to do that. But anyway, to anybody who really is struggling with a mental health crisis or just struggling to feel better, please know that there are people there that love you, they care about you, and they want you here, and that there are people who will listen. I promise. And again, it will get better. It really will. I know it sounds hopeless and it feels like you can't, but you will get better. And life will go on, and you will see wonderful moments. You will see things you look forward to come true. And when those moments come, please appreciate them, appreciate every day. I'm getting a little cheesy now, but like I said, there are resources, there are people there to help, and there are people that love you and they want you here. So reach out, talk about it. It's okay to talk about, end this silly stigma around mental health. It's okay to not be okay. It's normal, in fact. Many, 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 many people struggle. You're not alone. So please don't feel alone.